Get 'em up with the back row.
Hey all, Justin from Social Paintball, and today we're going to cover the exciting topic of traveling with high pressure air tanks. Via my recent experience with Living Legends 4 and the necessity for me myself to deal with detaching the regulator from the tank so that it could be flown through my baggage on the airport. They do require that they be able to visually inspect the tank bottle, so the regulator has to be removed separate. So we'll go over some care tips I have in general for tanks, some methods that you might consider when faced with this issue of having to remove a regulator yourself, some safety issues, some methods on how you degas the tank itself, and then how you can actually remove the regulator, as well as general kind of care tips and procedure for testing after you've gone ahead and reattached all this together. So I just thought this would help us all out. Those of us who are playing woods ball, outlaw ball, it might not necessarily have a pro shop nearby that can help us with this service. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. First step in removing a regulator from tank is degassing the tank itself. Put this on the marker and shoot the marker as much as possible until it will no longer fire. And once that's done, then you have to bleed off the rest of the gas and pressure in this tank, because there still will be some. So make sure you have gloves on. In a pinch, you could use a thread saver cap. Some of them have holes in the top, and they will actually, if you set the cap on top, depress the pin and it will vent out the threaded portion of the cap. This one on this Ninja Reg will not do that, so you can actually just use the corner of this thread saver cap to push on this pin here, degassing the tank. So make sure this is important that no one, not at yourself, when you go ahead and relieve the remaining pressure. Another fast method for degassing a tank would be to use a remote line. So you'd put your remote line on here, make sure you have control of the whip end, and go ahead, point the whip end away from you, and then turn on the valve and degas it through your remote line. When you're at home and you have all of your resources available, you might have some different options. I'll show you the little trick that I use for degassing a tank rapidly is my air cannon. So basically I just thread this into the ASA, and this is just the sweetest way to get gas out of a tank. It's the fastest. Thread that in, go ahead and open up the air cannon and vent this sucker all at once pretty much. So essentially you want to set up an apparatus of some sort where you're securing your regulator either with a wrench and a vise or a wood vise and a strap wrench. There's all kinds of options. Some guys talk about putting two 2x4s together around the reg and standing on them surrounding the reg and then turning the tank. There's all sorts of methods. So strap wrench, probably actually up a little further than this, on back a little bit, and you pull that tight. Make sure it's facing the right direction. So you righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And then go ahead and use a strap wrench with that secured method, however you've chosen, to go ahead and tighten this. Or in order to take it off, loosen it. So we'd be just turning it the other way if you're loosening it. I'm going to do this off camera, but at least give you an idea of kind of the setup. And I've had to put it sideways so that you can see this. The way I actually do this is from top down, and is a lot easier that way. But I wanted you to kind of just see this setting in there. Okay, so after you've broken the seal on the reg, just go ahead and turn it counterclockwise. And there are a considerable amount of threads on most any reg, so this could take a little bit. So what I did after I had the regulator free of the tank is I went ahead in terms of transporting this regulator. I got some bubble wrap, and I went ahead and I put, made sure my thread saver was on to protect the threads. Made sure I had a fill nipple cover of some sort. This one has a bearing in it. And went ahead and wrapped that in bubble wrap and sealed it in just a little sandwich bag. For the tank, they need to be able to visually inspect this. But what I did was actually just put a piece of saran wrap on with an O-ring holding that in place, and it was easy if someone needed to look in there just to pull it off. A rubber band would work as well, just to keep any debris from getting into the tank. So I just want to err on the side of safety. and really take care of your stuff. So after I got home, basically just take everything out again, unpack it, make sure there's no debris, and on your tank, make sure there's nothing in it. Could use a can of air real quick just to blow at any dust that might have been in there if you didn't cover up the top, but should be pretty much good to go. Okay, line it up, and then if you go backwards first just a little bit while you're level, and then forward, that's usually a pretty good way to get threaded correctly without cross threading. Okay, so slightly backwards, and then go ahead and thread this in all the way. If you do want to use the blue Loctite, you can go ahead and thread it in most of the way, and then just use a little tiny bit. You don't need much, just a drop or two, and make sure that you push that drop around the entire circumference of the last few threads of the reg. And when you thread that in, that blue Loctite is going to seal in those last few threads. Most important thing to remember as you're doing this, and however you configure this, is you get righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay? So make sure that you keep that in mind as you change the direction of this. Make sure that you're actually turning this the appropriate direction so that the reg is turning right if you want it to go tighter, or the reg is going to be turned left if you want it to remove it. That's the key concept right there. You definitely don't want to be going the wrong direction and be over-tightening something you want to remove. Easy to do for anybody. So just keep that in mind and work it out before you start going at it with the strap wrench and the vise or however you're doing it. But I'm just going to give this one with the strap wrench a little quarter turn. And I'm going to do this again actually off camera, but I just want to kind of show you how I do this with the wooden vise. And you could also use rubber around that as well to protect your reg more. I've already kind of trashed this reg a little bit, so I'm not too worried about it. I just want it tightened up. So right here I've got a scuba tank that I use, and scubas can hold up to 3,000 psi. What you want to do is test this in steps. So go ahead and put your fill nipple in and make sure that it clicks over the bearings as you attach that to the fill station. Make sure your bleed valve is shut, is closed, and go ahead and put just a couple hundred, like 300 to 500 psi into this. So you're going to open this up, just put a little bit in, maybe a little under 500 psi, and there's no noticeable failure of any kind in the regulator yet. So you want to go ahead and step this. We'll go another 500 or so and be ready to stop this if it begins to leak. So close the bleed valve again. Open up the scuba. So we'll go ahead and put some more air in here. I'm going to step it up to around 1,000. Close the valve on the scuba, bleed the air, and still everything sounds good. You can have a squirt bottle ready, soapy water. If you think you hear something, then you could know for sure if it is leaking. But right now we're sounding pretty good. So then go ahead, close the bleed valve. Let's put up to 2,000 in here. Push our luck a little bit. See if it fails. So, close the scuba valve, open the bleed valve, pull back, and release the fill nipple. You can see I'm just around 2,000 psi or so. Everything sounds good. Pretty happy with this. If you had a leak, you really would hear it right away. Sometimes until you get to actually around 3,000 psi or so. And then I've actually heard small leaks at that high pressure. So just do this in steps, work your way up. I only have 3,000 psi to work with here at home. I don't have the luxury of having a compressor. And, that's really my audience here, trying to help you guys be a little more safe. Guys like myself who have to do all this on their own, don't have a airsmith available. So I've gone ahead and maxed out what I can get out of the scuba. I'm closing that scuba valve, releasing the bleed valve to let the air out of the system here, and releasing the tank. And you can see my scuba's a little low. I'm at around 2,500 psi. So it's still possible that if I go somewhere and I crank this baby up to 4,000 psi, that it might develop a leak, but I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to set this aside and kind of keep an eye on it and see if over the next few days I am losing any air at all. But that's essentially the process for testing it after you've gone ahead and reattached the regulator. With fill nipple, you have the fill nipple housing itself here where you're going to attach and fill. And of course, you never ever want to put any kind of lube into this fill nipple. You're going to create yourself a nice little diesel engine inside this regulator and blow up your tank. So never any lube inside the fill nipple, inside where you fill your tank. Do not do that. That's the one no. It's out there everywhere. Just wanted to cover that real quick. But with this fill nipple off here, let me just show you. You've got essentially this little piston that moves inside of this fill nipple. So this sets inside here. And when the high pressure gas is going to flow in here, which is a higher pressure than what's in the tank, it's going to go actually push that piston back, breaking the seal of this O-ring here on the back of this piston. So what often happens is this O-ring on the back of the piston, due to wear and tear of going back and forth, possibly some debris coming in or what have you, gets worn and it develops a leak. And so after you've detached, or even while you're maybe gassing this off, but often once you detach, you'll hear hissing coming out the fill nipple because the pressure inside the tank is greater. It's pushing against that O-ring. That O-ring isn't sealed and it's flowing back out of the tank. So you might have to take off the fill nipple and get a new O-ring for the back of that piston there, and ram piston, whatever you want to call it, and put that back on to your regulator, putting a little dab of blue Loctite on. I learned something from my cousin who's a merchant marine. He was telling me about compression fittings and Teflon tape. And actually, and I don't know if this applies to the paintball compression fittings, but I'm just following the rule anyway because he told me about it, is basically the Teflon tape can actually cause the threads to expand slightly, so that if you use it once, you might have to retreat with Teflon again and maybe a little more Teflon the next time to make it seal the next time. So you're slowly spreading these off slowly and making more problems for yourself, as opposed to the liquid Loctite, which will just cure inside there and won't actually spread the threads physically due to the tension between the tape and the threads. Another part that could potentially leak is your air gauge. And it could actually leak because you've developed a crack in the face of this. Maybe you've dropped that and smacked it onto a rock or something. Or maybe just, let me take one of these old ones here. On the back here, your threads have loosened up and you've developed a leak, or you use Teflon tape or something happened that's moved and you've got a leak all of a sudden. So you might have to just tighten this down a little bit, torque it down a little bit. Or you might have to remove it, put some blue Loctite on, and go ahead and reattach it. That's an easy fix. Okay, the last problem that you might run into with your regulator where you might have a leak, and this is more likely to be a drastic kind of leak and failure that you'll notice right away, is what are called the burst discs. And many regulators will have two burst discs, one to protect against, it'll be at a lower pressure setting like 1800 psi, and it'll be basically to protect your gun against debris coming from the regulator. And that will burst so that your gun doesn't all of a sudden get a big charge of 4,500 psi coming into the marker. So it'll blow that 1.8 burst disc, and that will protect your marker in case there's debris. The second one is more for the drastic failure of the regulator at a higher pressure. And so let's just look at these real quick. And what I want to show you is the back side of a burst disc. You'll have the rating actually marked somewhere, either on the face of this or on the side of this. It'll say 1.8K, 4.5K, and there's going to be different burst discs. Just basically match that up to whatever burst disc you've blown on your tank. Make sure it's the same rating with the one you're replacing. But how a burst disc works is essentially when that debris comes through or whatnot, you have some problem, you've got a foil cover on the back of this burst disc. And so you basically have that material rated for that level of pressure. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's exactly like this, but the best analogy I have is sort of like a 12 gram where you have you pierce that and then the gas flows out. So you have sort of a foil like that material on the back of this burst disc. And so usually everything's honky-dory and then the gas is flowing by here. You get a problem, boom, it pierces through here, And when it pierces through here, the gas can come out through the burst disc and vent through a hole in the side here. So you can see that hole clear through to the Gorilla there. So when this foil bursts, boom, your gas is coming out of that hole and it isn't making it to your gun. The tank is a purchase that really is something going to last quite a while. So you really want to take good care of it so you don't have to replace it or parts on it due to just mishandling, misuse. Two products really help with that. One is a fill nipple cover. This one actually has a ball bearing in it. You can slightly see it there, and you just pull back on this, snap it over the fill nipple, and it will protect that fill nipple from any incidental damage as you're transporting it to the field and back. The other kind of just as important cover is the thread saver, and this is just a cap basically, and you can, sometimes I just put a little thread of Tri-Flow in here, something I picked up from Mike Tech PB on one of his videos actually. Tri-Flow has a little bit of silicone in it, and you just need a little drop of that, put it on your threads, and then go ahead and put on the thread saver cover, and that'll keep your threads nice and lubricated so that it's easier to unthread and thread this from the ASA on your marker. Another item for protecting your tank I recommend for every tank, and I've had this off because I was working on this, is an actual bottle protector here, bottle cover. This is an Empire brand. There's all sorts of brands, but really it's a good idea to have some sort of neoprene cover for your tank to protect it against physical damage. Another thing I just want to mention real quick in terms of, I'm not going to do regulator service today, but in the differences you've seen here, I've had Ninja regulators as well as Gorilla Air. And you know Gorilla Air is a sponsor, but I just want to point this out because I like it regardless whether they're a sponsor or not. With Gorilla Air, you actually, to service the reg, have to degas the marker because you put an Allen key down into this hole, and I'm not sure if it's going to come out on the video. I'll try my best to focus this. There's actually a hole for an Allen key right within the fill nipple. Not the fill nipple, right within where the pin valve is for the tank. So you actually stick an Allen key down in here, which is going to degas the marker. And once that, that kind of reminds you to degas the marker. I think that's a great design feature. And so you degas your marker, and then to service the reg, you can actually service it from the top and unthread the actual mechanism. This whole top piece threads out with the Allen key, pulls out, and you can get at your springs and service a lot of the reg without having to remove the reg from the tank, as opposed to the Ninja. So let's look at that real quick. And with the Ninja, not knocking them at all really, it's just differences in design here. With the Ninja you have essentially a bonnet, and on that bonnet you have grub screws, and I absolutely hate grub screws. They're just teeny tiny. I find them easy to strip, and you can drop them and then you're looking for them on the floor for a while. I just detest grub screws. Some people don't mind. I just find that the combined degas / service from the top model versus tear apart a bonnet and then service the whole thing here is kind of a better, more innovative design for me. A lot of people claim the Ninjas are more consistent. I have no way to really prove that at all. I'm not going to address it. I play Woods Ball Outlaw. As long as it holds gas, I'm happy. And so that's one major difference that I like. The other difference is if you have the newer Gorilla G2 reg, which I don't have here, you can actually adjust the fill nipple location, which is a nice feature. So instead of potentially having this jabbing into your wrist somewhere, you can actually turn this as part of the regulator and put it where you'd like it. That's a feature that the Ninja doesn't have yet. So there's just a couple differences there while I had the two here to point out to you that might help you when you're deciding whether or not or what brand you want to go with. But both really, really good tanks. Great luck with both of them. And of course I got the slight bias towards Gorilla Air. Full disclosure there. Okay, well, hopefully that wasn't too bad, and I know a lot of people are going to be cringing and say that's not how you do it, or you did this wrong, whatnot. I don't really care. That's how I did it. I was on my own. I talked to the company. I talked to different people I know online, and I kind of put them all together and came up with a methodology that I think that is sound and it actually works for me. And I've had to transport these 2 tanks and remove and put the regs back on a few times now. So it's worked out well for me. Haven't damaged my tanks. Nothing's gone wrong. And I think people are just in general, rightfully so, cautious of high pressure air. You should be cautious, but you don't necessarily need to be scared if you educate yourself a little bit, or hopefully get some information in videos that help you feel a little bit better about this procedure if you have to do it yourself, and give you some safe ways to go about it. So I hope this helped out. Hope I don't take too much flame from all you pros out there and how you go ahead and do these, and I'm sure there'll be other methodologies that are recommended. Of course, if you've got the option of a pro shop, if you've got the option of the manufacturer doing it, or of shipping this tank to yourself at a hotel room, go ahead and do that. But I know there are a lot of us out there that might not have those options, and or just want to be able to do this kind of service themselves anyways. I noticed at Living Legends 4, I did have to get the reg off myself because I had nobody local to do it. I did contact ahead to CPX, ask some questions on a forum on Facebook, and the responses I got were basically, you're on your own, Justin, when it comes to when you get here and you want those regs put back on, you got to put them on yourself. And in terms of when you need to come home, because I was flying home as well and had to detach them again, really there's no built-in service. You are lucky to have some great vendors there, whether it's Gorilla Air or Ninja Paintball, Ninja Help Me Out. So I really think that would be a great thing to add to large-scale events. I think it would increase the safety. If you have Joe Schmo like me there, maybe I haven't done a good job on putting this back on at the event for lack of tools, hardware, whatnot. And all of a sudden I'm blowing a gas tank. I know in one of my game videos you hear somebody blowing a burst disc or something right behind me. I don't know, it could have been their tank untwisting. Who knows? I just think it'd be a great service to have at the event, built in, and not have to kind of pick on the vendors to help you. They're all great people, they will help you, but it'd be nice if it was a service, even if it was like $5 or something to have it done. So I hope this video helped out. I know it's going to have some issues. Did the best I could with one man and a camera to show you what I do. I believe it'll work out for you safely if you follow the directions. If you are worried about the stall, don't do it. Simple as that. Just don't do it. Ship it, send it to the manufacturer, have them do it, and ship it back to you. Whatever you need to do. Be safe. That's the key. Be safe and take care of yourself. All right. Thanks.